on my street. Give me peace of mind again.
Hello? Okay, it's on. Hi, everybody. My name's Amber, and I'll be moderating this panel this afternoon. Waste not, wear not, want not. There are many things I love about fashion. It's creative, transformational, glamorous, and allows for self-expression. But beneath this aspirational industry worth over $1.7 trillion lies some significant issues. Today, we're going to do some trash talking, literally. We'll discuss the problem of waste in fashion and the solutions we need to transform it. Fashion waste permeates the entire supply chain. In this conversation, we'll focus on post-consumer waste, the clothes and accessories we buy or that companies don't sell. Much of it ends up in places that it doesn't belong. Waste not, wear not, want not. Here are a few staggering statistics. Out of every 5 pieces of clothing made, 3 end up in landfills or incinerated, wasting the resources used to create them. Every second, 1 garbage truck load of clothing is landfilled or burned. The EPA reports that close to 10% of landfills are clothing and textiles, releasing methane, a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. Think about your own closet and purchasing habits. Consider how they contribute to the fashion waste problem. Change starts with awareness, accepting our role in it, and taking action. Now, let's talk some trash. This question is for everyone on the panel. What constitutes as fashion waste? And we can start at either end.
Sure. I think you mentioned it before, but there's a supply chain component to fashion that we consider. So the way we're processing materials, off-cutting from production that could become waste. But I think the biggest problem as we see it is that 85% of all clothes end up in landfill, often only worn one time. And so I think mentioned before as well, that's actually in the US, 32 billion garments a year into landfill. It's so huge. And if you think about the resources that it takes to make those garments, the people, the human capital, the transportation, the storage, the distribution, 85% of all of that goes into the trash. It seems crazy. So that's how we quantify it. Just looking at that really big statistic and thinking about, the impact that you mentioned before that it has and what we can do to try and change that.
Hi, everyone. So the way I think about fashion waste is first and foremost getting our arms around the magnitude of this problem, right? And so today we are making, and these are conservative estimates, 100 billion units of clothes every single year. And how many people are there on the planet? 8 billion. And so I think that just puts into perspective that this overproduction is essentially why we have so much waste. We have enough clothes to not just clothe every human on this planet now, but for the next 30 years. And so when we at Remake think of waste, we first and foremost think about it in terms of the impact on women's bodies. It is predominantly Black and brown women that make our clothes, and whether you wear it once or you wear it 4 times, it's the same amount of labor. An average worker making Shein clothes is spending 75 hours a week to make that product that's likely only worn once. We're shipping 600,000 packages of Shein into this country every single day. And so think about that labor, that human dehumanization, that to us is first. Second is really this is a climate justice issue of our time. We are close to 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from the fashion industry. And at this rate of production, we will be close to 26% by 2050. That's up there with airline and all the other ways that we think about fossil fuel. We never think about clothes and fossil fuel. But I think the most important thing here is that we are treating the second-hand markets essentially as waste stream management. And what I mean by that is we are outsourcing our overproduction and overconsumption to places like Chile and Ghana. If you've never ever seen, Google images of the Chilean desert where you can literally see denim from satellite photos. The entire floor beds in Ghana and their beaches are covered with our clothes. And so this truly is a justice issue of our time. That's what I think about when I think about fashion waste. And yes, it makes me very cross, but we have solutions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Overproduction really is the issue. And as a young person, fast fashion is so appealing. It's cheap, it's right there, it's what's trending, but it's hurting us. And, you know, we wear things once, twice, until it gets a hole. And it's really causing pain as a human society, as, you know, people of the earth. It's horrible. So when it comes to fast fashion and it comes to fashion waste, I think really the solution is so simple. It's stop buying so much, you know. And it sounds so juvenile, but it's true, because as a young person, you know, you look at your peers and you're like, oh well, this is what's cool right now, but tomorrow it's not. So you end up with so much clothes, you end up with so much content that it's too much for one person, it's too much for one family, and that's where we end up with all of these denim houses and denim piles, essentially, that you can be seen from space. That you know, Ghana is struggling as well, and it's a human issue. It's not just an American issue. It's not just a foreign issue. It's a human issue. So that's what I think of when the word fashion waste comes up.
Thank you. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. Considering the size of the fashion industry, and we know how complex the supply chain is, we know there's many solutions, but they're also quite complex in themselves. Do you all want to start talking about some of the solutions?
Sure. I mean, I think, again, we specifically focus very much on end of life at the consumer level. And so I often like to ask this question: who here has too much stuff? That's central. Like that, to your point, we're buying too much, we accumulate too much. But there aren't great resources for processing that product when you're done with it responsibly. And I think that's a big miss in kind of the whole product life cycle. Of course, we need to buy less. We need to make things with more integrity and quality. We need traceability. We need supply chain integrity and reporting. But at the end of the day, we're all going to have a post-consumer kind of moment, no matter what, some less than others. And to date, there haven't been great ways of making sure your product's getting to the right place next, making sure it's not ending up in a landfill in Chile or on the beaches of Ghana, which is very irresponsible. And so, you know, some of those solutions, and we're integral in kind of creating them, are post-consumer collection methodologies, better sorting and grading, which means everything that comes in is really processed deeply and with a lot of precision, finding markets for it. There's another, I mean, we have far too much, but 70% of the world's population actually wears used clothing exclusively. So it's not as if we can't find interesting homes for it. There is incredible investment in post-consumer recycling technologies where we can take materials and literally break them down and turn them into something new. There's a lot of innovation happening, but if we don't capture that waste, divert it from landfill, and process it responsibly, it'll just keep happening. So we think of that touch point as a real opportunity, and then really kind of integrating that into the innovation on the traceability and the recycling side.
I have 3 very concrete solutions of what we can and should do. But I want to preface this with, you know, the sort of elephant in the room, that this is about overproduction far more than overconsumption. The industry over a decade has more than doubled production. And the only way to do that is by relying on fossil fuel, consistently underpaying women. And so when we think it's our fault, you know, I think it's also recognizing that we are being marketed at constantly to keep buying, buying, buying. And at this point, the problems are so wicked that our individual consumption habits aren't going to steer this boat where we need it to go. And so first and foremost, we call on the fashion industry with our partners at OR Foundation and many other civil society organizations to tell us how much are you making with virgin material every single year. Happily, there are some brands over the last 2 years that have started to do that. But hey, y'all, you can't fix what you don't know. Until we know how much we're producing with virgin material, we're getting nowhere. So that's one. Second, we're calling on governments to have justice-led extended product responsibility. What that means is we are asking fashion brands to pay something like 50 cents per product for us to be dealing with the waste stream and life cycle of that. It's not that much, 50 cents. But here's where it gets interesting. France has a textile regulation for the first time. California is considering it, but they want to keep the money in France and California. But it is Ghana and Chile that are dealing with the problems. And so that's why we talk about a justice lens to EPR. And third, what we want is living wages as a climate solution, y'all. If we pay women up and down the fashion system better, have safer jobs of dignity, we won't be making so much stuff. And so I just want to close out with, in order for us to fix problems, we have to have a dream of what we're aspiring to. This is LA, we care about our health and wellness, so close your eyes if you'd like. But here's what I dream when I think of a fashion system. I dream of a fashion system that has safe jobs of dignity, whether model or garment worker. An industry that divests from fossil fuel, gets plastic and polyester out of our clothes so that it's truly soil to soil and regenerative. And if we can hold that vision, we have solutions.
I think education is so important because you truly don't know what you don't know. And I think education for companies, education for the consumer can really make an impact and make a change. Particularly with smaller brands, you really don't know what you don't know. You just kind of follow the beaten path of, okay, this is what my inspiration is doing, so this is what I should be doing. But when you really break it down and you really pay attention to the fine details of what's important and how you're leaving an impact on your consumers, that's really the most impactful thing that you can do as far as making a change is educating others and educating other brands on how they can be better. It's not about pointing fingers, it's about helping others be better, truly. It's about improving on a slow but steady track because, in all reality, we can't rip the Band-Aid off. We can't just jump and say, okay, this is all going to be sustainable and environmentally friendly, because there is an industry that isn't built off of that basis. So you have to work little by little. Little by little becomes a lot. So it's about education, and it's about slowly but surely moving in the right direction.
Thank you all so much. Kristy, you were talking a little bit and touching on this subject of kind of circularity. So would you talk about Trashy and your model and what you all are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that concept of circularity, you mentioned regeneration, they kind of go hand in hand. I think we have this concept of sustainability, which often relates to material choices and making things better. But really, circularity is this concept of perpetually keeping things in circulation, using them to their highest and best value. So if a garment's made and it has life left in it, how do we get it to a place where it can continue being used? If a garment has materials that could be repurposed into something valuable, how do we make sure we capture that? And that really would reduce our reliance on raw materials. It would reduce our footprint on the supply chain. So it has this incredible opportunity to change the way we actually produce and make. We need less, even though we can enjoy the products. I think it's hard to say, don't buy as much stuff when there is Shein. And we've seen consumption go up by 400% over 20 years. Like, we're in that cycle. If we could make those products themselves more renewable and circular, the whole system would get better. So what we've worked on is really engaging the consumer in this dialogue. I think it can be really hard and daunting to solve the problem every day. And I think every single day we want to make better choices, but we're all living our lives. And so we've created a product. I actually have one one right here I'll show you because, as we discussed before, everyone has too much stuff. We've made a really simple product. It's called a take back bag. Recycling is my love language. We've really made it easy for consumers to get engaged in this conversation and say, oh, I can take one little step. You buy this bag from us, which is important. It's a financial commitment. Waste is not free, which I think is important to get into the mindset. You can fill this bag up with anything from any brand, any material, any condition. Send us your single socks, your stretched out pajamas, your holey sweatpants. We take everything back and put it through a very detailed sorting and grading process. That's important because we don't want things ending up in Ghana. We capture 95% of what we collect and find a second home for it. And so we've created this virtuous cycle. When you participate, you also get rewarded. So we have a full rewards platform that allows you to kind of feel good, but also like really actually generate value. I think when we talk about circularity and sustainability, as much as, again, we have this kind of high-minded vision for the future, which I totally agree with, at the end of the day, on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute basis, people need motivation and incentive. And I think we think about that from the consumer lens, but also from the business lens. So by participating in this, businesses can also offer this to their consumers. They offer rewards. They get people into the system of recycling. And we have actually distributed 480,000 of these bags in the last year. And collected over 5 million pounds of textile waste. So it's really starting the cycle of consumer behavior where you're like, I can do that. I can do that again next week. I can do that next month. Or I don't consume as much and I can watch my need for this go down. So that's the role we play. We bring this really to kind of the mass market and this concept of circularity or this concept of sustainability. We make it very available and accessible and bite-sized.
Accessible is a huge key because a lot of people don't even know not to put their clothing or textiles in the trash.
I mean, 85% of them go directly in the trash.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I know people. I mean,
Yeah.
I saw someone I'm close to throw some, socks in the trash or a sweaty T-shirt, and I was like, no. We don't do that. There's a bag in the, we've got
take
something.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And I just think most people do not realize that it doesn't go in the black bin here. The
Well, and
bin that's got that's the kind of undiscriminated, not plastic, not glass, not aluminum, not your garden waste. So people just throw anything and everything in there.
well, I think it's hard. Like when I talk to individuals, people are like, I don't know where to take it. Like I've heard that Goodwill throws things out. My charity shop doesn't want my sweaty T-shirt. What do I do?
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's like they're creating really easy systems for consumers to do an easy act that gets us in the right motion. Is just important.
also know,
we
like,
take
not-
sheets and towels and other stuff too.
And not all take backs are the same, right?
Mhm.
You've had
No.
investigative journalists put air tags into bins that are being collected and then it ends up in Ghana anyway. So I do
Right.
think, and I don't think it's high-minded to talk about root causes because really if we are not to think about this in a systems lens and just encourage people no matter what you buy, it'll and there are better solutions and worse, but we're still tinkering on the edges, and I think the urgency with which we need climate solutions really has to shine through. Yes, little steps meet you where we are, but our planet is burning.
Yeah.
Garment workers are dying of exhaustion in factories. Like, this is not okay. So yes, it has to be urgent and it has to be collective because tinkering on the edges of what I can do individually is all right if that welcomes you into the movement, but without systemic reform, we're not going to have a breathable planet. And that's just the data.
Yeah. Before we get to the clip of Brandy Helville, one of the things that I kept hearing in my head as I was listening to you guys and receiving was the growth conundrum. I keep pushing back on people that I work with. It's like, how much is enough? Where is the profit? Where can you stay that's reasonably safe within your own boundary? We're not talking about planetary boundaries. We're talking about within your boundary and knowing the data, because now we have so much data available, and we're going to continue to have it with passports, digital passports. These companies need to start making less. There's no reason. It's just too much. They're losing money, and then they burn it. It's like,
I mean, I think it's 25% of production actually never makes it to market.
right? That's
So,
crazy. That's
yeah.
a loss.
Bad production planning, bad inventory. We've just relying on a system of overproduction, which then makes us overconsume. And so that's why I keep coming back to it has to become too expensive to make so much because we are externalizing those costs onto workers, onto waste stream management. And so it has to be too expensive. No one's going to do it from the goodness of their heart, Amber.
No,
you know?
it is. Yeah, it's you're absolutely right. And with that, let's take a minute to see this clip from Brandy Helville.
Ghana is like a dumping ground for our unwanted fast fashion. We have deals with countries in Africa to take the clothing, even though they don't necessarily need it.
We are currently in Kantamanto market, which is the largest second-hand economy in the world. Kantamanto sees around 50 million garments each week. And then just for context, Ghana as a country only has 32 million people. So if you look at it, that means almost every Ghanaian needs to buy at least one outfit every week for us to consume the amount of stuff that comes in from the global north. So the US, Canada, UK, other parts of Europe.
In Ghana, secondhand clothing is called Obruniwawu, which means dead white man's clothes. The term comes from the fact that when clothing started flooding in here, people assumed that it came from people who had died. Because why else would there be so much of it?
So that's pretty shocking to see. We don't have much time, so I'm going to let you, Ayesha, take us out on what motivated Remake to partner with Brandy Helville, and also if you could leave us with some solution, please.
Very fast, 35 seconds. So we really agree at Remake in terms of education and how important that is. And when the director, Eva Orner, contacted us, she had an investigative journalism background. She had done the climate film Burning. And so I knew and I trusted that she could tell a story that wouldn't just be about canceling one brand. We've had lots of those documentaries, right? The Abercrombie doc, the Victoria's Secret doc. And what I think Eva did a very good job here was to paint the broader issues of the fashion industry. And for us, the collaboration was important because it was really a love letter to women and girls. Because if you do watch the documentary Brandy Helville and the Cult of Fast Fashion, it's streaming on Max, it shows how whether you're an influencer, retail worker, garment worker, a waste stream worker, it is women and girls that keep this industry profitable, and yet we're constantly dehumanized. And what's been wonderful is how many moms of teens, how many high schools have contacted us to stream the doc. And so in terms of solutions, very quickly, if you're in the beginning of your journey, follow us on Instagram, Remake Our World. We try and make it very easy to be a part of the solution. Every summer, you're going to take it right. We do the No New Clothes Challenge, where for 90 days, we just say, buy nothing, buy upcycle, buy secondhand, join the movement. But then really, at the end of the day, come into your activism power. What we say at Remake is, citizen first, consumer second. We're not going to consume our way into a sustainable world. The only way to do it is to come into a citizen power. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.